can, yeah, I can't remember the ones we said. So.
Okay, is this on?
Yeah.
It's working. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so last week we had a question in regards to the TKVO. Does everyone remember that? And the 5 meals per hour, and it needs to be capped at 24 hours because that's what our standards are. And I sent out a response to that saying that, yeah, we can do it. Well, we can do it, but we're not to. Okay, so I sent out another follow-up email today. There's a couple of reasons as to why we don't, and one of that is because when we go in and adjust from bag to hours, we lose that end bag off our MAR and our MAR summary, so you can't go in and actually complete the bag. So it sort of stays on there for infinity. The only way to complete it is to get the doctor to go in and cease it, and then he needs to start another order. So we don't do it simply because it just overcomplicates things. As for the 24-hour rule, there is no hard and fast. There's nothing in the system that allows a workaround to be able to stop that. Okay, so we have to go back to old school. One of the ways that we're suggesting is perhaps doing on our SBAR handovers that the day that, or the time and day that we start that TKVO and when it's to cease and to be replaced. Does that make sense? No?
I'll show you on here. So as Nikki said, that I know there were some questions around the TKVO, and I'm the fun sponge that said we can't do it. There is a reason we can't do it. And that reason is all around, we have made, I don't know what that was, we have made fluids in the system, they're one bag, one order equals one bag. Oh, do we do dial in this? Up there. So the way we've designed fluids in the system, because this is how we do it currently, we do one order on the paper fluid form, yes, and that equals one bag. Okay, so when we designed this whole system, it is an American product originally, and they do continuous fluids. So the way that they do their fluids in the States is that one order just runs continuously until the doctor says, yeah, that's enough, we don't need that fluid order anymore, which we know that's not how we do it here. So that duration is what allows us to be able to do the one order equals one bag. As soon as you modify that duration, so this is why we say it's a no-no, so as soon as you go ahead and you modify this duration here away from one bag, it stuffs up the order. Then no nurse can actually go and use the end bag task. So you know when you go and select end bag task in your fluids and then that discontinues the order and it's nice and pretty, if that duration is modified, it stuffs up the order and then you can never end bag the task from the MAR. You need to go into the actual order and discontinue. So we know that's not a nursing job routinely, so this is why we never adjust that duration on IV fluid bags. Does that make sense? You'll probably realise the hard way, because there probably will be some doctors that go see a duration and go, oh, well, you know, we're running it, 24 hours or 8 hours, so I'm going to change the duration to 8 hours. As soon as you do that, you're going to find as a nurse when you're trying to end bag and it's not disappearing, that's why. Okay, so they get trained that in training as well, not to touch that duration, because we don't routinely use fluids like that in Australia. Does that make sense? Yeah. Sorry to come back from holidays and be like, nah, you can't do it. So again, if you've got those KVO fluids and they're running 24, for 24 hours, we know we usually take them down. Same practice now. You look at the date that they were hung. You should always, as soon as you come on your shift, you should be looking at your fluid orders. You should be checking when they were hung or when they were put up and connected, and you should be making sure that they're not going past the 24 hours. And then if that is, you should be getting rid of that fluid bag. Same as it is on paper. So we are continuing with that. We are hoping that in the future we'll get some kind of alert for KVO fluids, or really any fluids, to say, hey, listen, are you aware that this fluid bag's been hanging for 24 hours? So that is our ultimate plan, but we're not near that at this stage. So exactly, all fluids shouldn't be running longer than 24 hours. So you still need to be looking at your order, making sure, okay, this bag, and it's the same, like I said, check your bag, check your expiration dates, when did it get hung, it's all the same. Yes, Ursula? Yeah, of course. Okay. So this is default, so when they order the fluid, this already comes in there, one bag, and it's normally greyed out. We're having some difficulties with this. I don't know. Oh.
I answered it, then I tried to silence it.
There you go. I don't know what we did, but So this usually comes and it's greyed out, so the doctors can't change it on fluids, okay? Because we know that, like I said, we don't want them changing it, because as soon as they do that, it stuffs up our end bag for nurses. So this is usually greyed out, and they can't change it. The only circumstance you wouldn't see these ones are for those truly continuous orders. So we're talking, and you'll see it, I'll show you in the heparin, or like a pantoprazole infusion, those ones where they are truly bottomless orders, you know, like they write the order, and then we just keep hanging it. And it keeps going until the doctor says, okay, let's discontinue that order, I'm going to scribble it out and cease it. Those are the only truly continuous, and they won't have the 1 bag duration. Lasix is another one, insulin. So we don't need an order for every syringe. We go and put in the pumps. We just keep going until they say get rid of the insulin infusion. They're the only ones that don't. Does that make sense? So if you get to go live and you've got a bag of fluid and for the life of you it just won't disappear from the MAR even though you keep clicking that end bag task, if you jump in and have a look, you probably can see that that duration has been modified or tampered with. And that's why you can't. And if that's the case, then you need the doctor to go in and discontinue the whole order. Make sense? Yes?
So that's going to be a change in practice for medical boards, because we normally do get new orders every single day for Lasix, for pantoprazole.
Yes.
Every single time that empties, they need to write up a new order.
Yes, so that would be a new one then. So those ones are built in the system as truly continuous, so you won't need a new order for that. You'll just be starting a new bag on the same order. So you don't have to, ring them up. But it is that also, again, is through training that the doctors know that those are truly bottomless orders. So they need to discontinue it when they're finished. So let me just quickly, before we get into complex, I will show you, answer your question, Ursula. I think I've got a bag of fluid here. Fluids do get a little bit tricky, and to be honest, that's probably, when we go live, that we get so many calls about fluids. It's just a new way of doing it where, we don't have our handy little fluid balance chart anymore in our fluid form, end bag task, pending bag task, modify it. It does get confusing, so we do expect to get a lot of calls. So the more you can get in on your patients and just practice, even if you're not a prescriber and you want to have a practice so you can see how it looks on the other end, if you understand how the ordering happens, sometimes it makes it easier to understand how the administration and how it affects. So, what have I got here? I have got a glucose bag. So as soon as you order the fluid bag, actually let's just start again because I don't know how long that one's been there. Last week, did they show you IV sequencing? The IV fluid sequence? They did? Beautiful. So we won't do let's just do a sequence. Yeah? So lovely Karen presented for us last week. Drew was away sick with tonsillitis, I believe. I think everyone's sick at the moment, so apologies, we went around a little bit. Okay, so I'll just do one now for those who haven't seen it. So a sequence, you do have to put a name in the sequence, so you do have to title it. So usually you'll see a lot of post-op fluids or day one admission fluids, and then they'll go ahead and order. So let's do, whoopsie. One of those, and we'll do one of these. So the whole point with sequencing is just allows them to order multiple bags. So even though I'm saying one order equals 1 bag, we know that sometimes, like I said, after theatre, maybe they want to order a couple of bags. Rather than having to go in and order each bag, we put them in a sequence, which means that they want this bag to run first, then they want this bag to run second. It doesn't let you start that second bag until you finish the first bag, so it's nice and easy to see the order of the bags they want. Whereas on paper, they usually have like a 1 beside it, and then maybe a 2, and it's kind of all, or some doctors say, well, if it's in order, that's the order I want. It is kind of confusing, so that's why we have IV sequences in the system. It is the preferred way for them to order multiple bags of fluid. So let's do one more. Let's do... Do you have any results? All right, so from here then they can change the order of their sequence. So they might go, okay, well actually I want the 3% and the third to go first, so they can start changing that around. We go ahead and say create sequence. And I will just show you quickly. See how that's all greyed out, like I said before, that duration? So they can't tamper with that. 1 bag equals 1 order, that's it. Once that bag's done, that's it for that order. You need a new order for a bag. All right, let's go sign that off. Okie dokie. So here is our sequence. So you can see it's got the post-op up the top. And then you've got your first bag and you've got the blue task to mean that's available to be hung. And then these other ones are greyed out, meaning that you can't start this one until that first one's done. So if that sequence needs to change, it needs to come from the doctor to say, yes, well, now I want to do the potassium first or whatever, which is how it would normally happen out there anyway. So as soon as you begin the bag, so we go in and put our site. As soon as you begin it, based off what that rate is, that's when the estimated end bag task will drop on the MAR. So for this first one, I ordered 8th hourly. So if I scroll across, then it's worked out that at 9:43, that's when that bag roughly should finish. And that's where your end bag task. So if you can't see it, you probably just need to scroll along. The end bag task is the way that you get rid of that order. So your pending is where you do all your other actions. You might do your infused volumes, maybe there's been boluses. You would be selecting this one to do any of those IV events. As soon as you want to end the bag, you are selecting the end bag task. Okay, and as soon as you put in that final infuser volume, that's when that order becomes discontinued. Oh my God.
I just pushed the...
I don't know. So the end bag task does not move based on volume. It does not move. It doesn't know whether you've started or stopped that pump. So if you're running some antibiotics and you're bolusing and things like that, the system doesn't know that. So that end bag task is still going to stay where it's estimated to finish. The only thing that will move that end bag task is if the rate changes. Okay, so it's really only there as a guide. If it's not in the right spot, do not panic. It's really just from the start when that first got ordered based off the rate, this is roughly when it should finish. Okay, that makes sense? The other thing, and I don't know if Karen showed you last week, is the manage infusions. Did she show you that? Or I can't remember if I've even showed you this before. I'm getting confused. Yeah, I'll show you. Absolutely, I'll show you. I just wanted to quickly touch on this to see if, have you guys seen the manage infusions tab before as well? No? So this is just another nice way to see your fluids. So it doesn't look as nice on this resolution, but normally, oh well, that doesn't look as nice because this patient has a lot going on. But particularly the doctors and prescribers, you know, when they're constantly like, have you hung that bag yet? Have you started infusing it yet? I ordered it. It's easier for them to just come here because it will tell you whether it's infusing or not. I mean, they could go to the MAR technically, but it's a nice, easy, simple view for the doctors in their simple ways. So when you go on your legend, it tells you if it's dark blue, it means it hasn't started yet. It hasn't been infusing yet. If it's light blue, it's saying, okay, yes, it's infusing at the moment. So they might come here and go, oh, okay, well, I can see that 3% a third's been infusing. The other thing that it will do, and it will give you them, is the estimated time as well. Again, that's just your estimated. That's not a hard and fast, it's due to finish at this time because it doesn't take into account if you're running IV antibiotics through a burette, if you're stopping, if you're starting or whatever. It doesn't take that into account. But that's just another, everyone has access to that. It's usually the doctors that like to look at it like that, but by all means go in there and have a play and see what that looks like. To end the bag, simple, you just select that task. Now the reason this comes up one last time is because if you're putting in your fluids, which most wards do, by the hour, so if it's running 8th hour and you put in 125 mils each hour, it's allowing you to put in your last 125 mils. It's saying, well, is there, you know, something left in that bag before you're going to take it down? So you might want to put in your last 125. Alternatively, if you're one of those wards that you don't really enter it on the hour, you just wait till the bag's finished and then you go, well, 1,000's gone in. You can also do that. So you could also say, okay, well, I haven't entered anything through on this bag yet. So I'm going to say, well, the full 1,000's gone in. If I go higher than 10%, also give you a warning to say, wait a minute, that's more volume than what's in the bag. Are you sure that's right? So if people have gotten a bit excited and put too much fluid and they haven't been watching that bag, you'll get an alert coming up and saying, well, there shouldn't be 1,500 mils in that bag. Are you sure that's right? So it might make you go back and have a look. So if I put that 1,000 in and I say apply, I sign that off. That now goes grey, and that says, okay, well, that order's finished, it's discontinued, and that next one is now available for me to hang. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Yeah. So if you're finding the end bag is not disappearing, it might be because the duration's changed, or sometimes it's even that you're accidentally clicking the pending. We saw a little bit of that at PA at Go Live. They're trying to end the bag, but it's actually the pending task, not the end bag, so you need to do it from the end bag. Does that answer everyone's question? In the circumstance that you've got a bag like your KVO fluid, So you can't see your end bag task because you can only see 24 hours in advance on the MAR. Even if you change all the date ranges, there's safety reasons in here, you can't see any further than 24 hours. And if your bag is, you can't see your end bag task, so try as you might to change that date, you're never going to be able to see it. There is an alternative way to get rid of that bag, and this should really only be done for your KVO fluids. You right click on it and you say complete order. Have another go and see if it's one of those things. If someone had been meddling, maybe another user had jumped in and modified and been playing around also. So start from a clean patient and have a go. Any troubles, let me know. So it does give you a quick, you sure you want to complete this order. The reason it pops up with that is because as soon as you say yes and it discontinues, you can't get that order back. You can put in an infuse amount. So if I go yes, and then I go, oh man, that was the wrong bag of fluids, and it's now saying it's discontinued. Oh, I've got so many on here, I beg your pardon. You can always come in here and you can modify. So you can come in here and you can say, well, I want to bring up and put in my final infuse amounts. I forgot to do that. That's fine, but you can't make that an active fluid order. If you have done the wrong one, you're going to have to get a new order from the doctor. Does that make sense? So if there was only 700 mils left in that bag, you're going to have to go get another order from the doctor. Maybe they might just order instead of the 1,000, they can change the mils. They might say, well, here's a 700 mil bag to replace. Do it once, you'll probably never do it again, trust me. It does happen though. So when you accidentally do it, there's no way to get it back. So that's why we always recommend, unless it's a KVO, we do recommend that you go from the end bag because it gives you that final check, like is this really what I want to be doing? Do I need to enter any final infuse amounts? It gives you that last final check before it goes and doesn't come back. Does that make sense? Is it a bit clearer on fluids? They're tricky. You just need to get in there and play. It's the quickest way you're going to learn. Practice ordering. We know nurses as well, you'll do phone orders and things like that for fluids as well, so get used to ordering as well. So that's probably, was there anything else we had to follow up before I move on? If we have time at the end, I don't think we had a scanner last week, I heard. And you know how I love me a scanner, so I bought one. If we get time at the end, I know we're doing complex meds, so a lot of you probably are here for the complex. If we get time, if anyone wants to see it, we can show you some of the different alerts. I did put it in your toolbox, though, for your barcode scanner, because there's always lots of questions, particularly from the nurses around, what happens if I need to scan it, or what are the different alerts I see. So if you didn't get a toolbox from last week, they're at the back tables. Nikki's been kind enough to print them off because they've got some really good information on it. All right, let's get into complex. So I have been away for 2 weeks, and then I get to come back and get hit up with complex first day back. So this is really fun. Let's see how we go. So the complex meds I want to talk about today is heparin, IV infusions, and insulin is another one. The reason I want to talk about those two because they are quite complex, hence the name, and you will get a lot of questions about them come go live as well. It's just a matter, again, of getting in the system and playing. When you're in training and they're doing it up on the screen, sometimes it's hard to understand how it all connects, but I promise you they do get easier. They're overwhelming at first. So if we do your heparin first, now all of these complex meds, the reason they are complex is because there's so many guidelines and protocols that go with them. It's not a straight, like, here's a med and here you go. If you look at your heparin infusion paper form, there's a ridiculous amount of words on there and there's a ridiculous amount of instructions. So we had to try and somehow get that paper form into the system. And that's quite a it's pretty good paper form. It's been in use for a long time and it does what it needs to do. So it was actually really challenging with the insulin one as well. There's a lot of information on those forms, on the insulin form, the subcut one. To try and get that into the system was a huge challenge. And we had to do a lot of consultations with a lot of governing groups and a lot of, the endocrinologists all had to go vascular. It was really painful. It still makes me a little bit nervous even talking about it because it was pretty hard at the time. But we have got it working. It is working now at PA and Mackay now. Mackay went live yesterday. So they're live currently up there. And we have about 4 weeks to go, or 2 weeks if you work in outpatients for ESM. They go live in 2 weeks. We've got 4 weeks. So we're getting close now. So I thought that's why I've purposely saved some of the complex meds for the end, because it's better to be fresh in your mind. So heparin is based off statewide guidelines. So based off the reason you're ordering the heparin will determine which one you're going to choose, which power plan you're going to choose. So power plans, the reason they're called power plans is because they're just groups of orders. So it's a way that we can add more information and more decision support into an order. So when the doctor goes to order it, where they're used to having all that information at their hands so they can determine what they need to do for their patient, this is how we do that in the system. We use power plans because, as you can see, there's a lot more information into these plans, and they're a group of orders. It doesn't just have to be meds. We can add in there pathology. It's really like a pathway. If you think of your pathways on paper, it's pretty much similar to that in the system. So, with your heparin, if I bring this back, so I've chosen the heparin based if the patient had a DVT or a pulmonary embolism, and it is for an adult. There are pediatric ones in there as well. And then we've got these phases underneath. We do call them phases, and they're obviously just different parts of the patient's treatment plan. So these are all based off the APTT scores. So we know that when those values come back, we generally change the treatment plan depending. So that's why they're built into different phases. So to start with, we're going to go to this first phase, which is just the IV infusion order. Okay, so we've got that here. The yellow just means it's persistent text, so that will always be there. And we always have the protocol and the policies behind it. So if you selected this one here, it'll take a little while, but it will bring up your heparin infusion paper form. So if you ever need to refer back to that, I don't know if our internet's, it'll eventually come up. Here it comes. Nope, that's not it. We'll come back to it. It will eventually come up. It's because we are using a mock domain. And then it also has other instructions that go with the ordering of an IV heparin infusion as well. And these are all the same things that you'd be used to on your paper form. Okay. So all your blood results are there. So your APTTs. This is your, we've got your heparin bolus. So your heparin bolus dose there. Again, please don't get overwhelmed. I know it looks messy. It takes a little while to get used to reading power plans like this. At the moment, it just looks like a lot of words. But if you think of, like I said, that paper form, it's exactly the same. It was the same thing we had to get used to. So let's say we're going to order this heparin bolus first up. This is what we call a dosage calculator. So this is working out the bolus, how much you need to bolus your patient with. So obviously this is very much on the prescribing side. It's pulled in the weight. So it's pulled in 75 kilos that, maybe a nurse has entered in on admission. And then it's worked out based off the formula, so 80 units per kilo. And then it's worked out that 6,000 units is how much we need to give. Doctors don't have to go with this. Obviously, this is based off the dosage calculator. They can go in and they can actually change that final dose if they need to. But for this circumstance, we're just going to say apply dose. So that's our bolus done. The other thing they might want to do is change that to the first dose priority to now. So rather than waiting for the next scheduled, it'll drop now. And I actually will check that because I feel like we changed that in prod. Yeah, so I think that automatically, as soon as you order that heparin bolus, it should be now because that's actually how it should be out there anyway. So I'll double check, but Catherine and I are pretty sure. I'll let you know. And then oh yeah, good one.
Capped, whereas in the train domain it's not.
Correct.
So if you've got a high weight patient, it'll do the calculation, but it won't automatically cap you at the top dose for that indication. Whereas in the production domain it does.
Good one. Okay. So that's our bolus, and the other one we want to do is obviously order the actual IV infusion. So this is our order here. We've got our usual 25,000 units in our 50 mils. So we'll go ahead and select that one. It's got a bit of text to go with it, just saying why it's what it's for, which will all show up face up on the MAR as well. When I go to initiate, it's going to give me another calculator, and this is for the actual rate. Now, are we all aware that heparin, the rates for your heparin ordering now is per units per kilo per hour? Yes, we've all heard that. This is not the first time people are hearing that. Good. So that means that your pumps have all undergone a little bit of a change, so that when you go to put your rates in, so if you're the nurses starting your pumps, you're now putting it in units per kilo per hour, as opposed to your mils, which is what we're used to, all your units if you change it that way. That also means you need to put in a weight in your pump. I don't know if you guys were putting in weights. It wasn't something we were doing at the PA, so you will see when we get closer to go live and you start seeing your pumps when they're coming back from being modified, you need to put in the weight in there as well. Okay, so again, it's pulled in the 75 kilos, and it said, well, based off that, if the weight is less than 84 kilos, we recommend that you do 18 units per kilo per hour. Again, this is based off all the usual protocols. If they're above 84, then you will be using the 20 units per kilo per hour. So the prescribers will obviously need to read that and go, okay, well, they're 75, so that's under 84, so I'm going to do it on the 18 units per kilo per hour. That all makes sense? They'll sign that off to say, yes, I understand. They still, though, need to then just go ahead and put that 18 units in this rate here. Okay? So they'll come in and go, okay, well, the dosage calculator said to do this. I've worked it out myself on my own calculator, and I'm happy with that. 18 units is what I'm going to order for this infusion. So they'll put that there. You'll see the weight has also been pulled down to the bottom as well. And then they're going to go ahead and say, let's sign that off. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. The other thing I didn't show you was the APTTs. I think I talked about the blood quickly. Your APTT for the next 6 hours is also there with an offset. So you see that little 6+, that's telling you that in 6 hours an APTT will get sent off as well. So the doctors would normally order that. I'm not going to do that at this stage because it will just clog up this test patient, but they would normally also select that APTT. Well, hell, let's just do it. It's my patient anyway. I'll regret that tomorrow when I've got all these orders sitting on my patient. Okie doke. Now, I am going to change over to our nurse now, just so you can see it from the way you'd be used to. RN5. So same things, a couple of things happen which you would be familiar with. Obviously, it's going to go to your Care Compass with an alert saying there's a new order for your patient, and it will say it's your IV heparin. So you're probably familiar with, do I even have a list? I think I do. Hopefully everyone now knows what that little orange box means around their patient's name. It means there's a new order or results there. That should say heparin IV infusion. Let me just do a little... I'll come back and I'll double check when we change the rate that does work. But that does work in the real domain, I promise. I promise, that's one of our main selling points. Okay, so let's just go back in. I did actually, but because I'm logging in as a nurse, it should be the most refreshed, up-to-date version. So, but we'll double check it again when I go to do. I'm going to show you when the APTT comes back and we have to modify it, because that absolutely is crucial. That gets a message sent to the nurse saying, "Hey, do you know that rate's been changed on that IV infusion?" Not to say that the doctors don't have to use their words; they still have to let you know that the rate's changed and things like that. But it's that extra safety catch. But I'll show you that, which hopefully will work in here. Okay, so that's your bolus. Now, I do need to mention, because I know that nurses here at Logan, you bolus from your pumps, correct? Yeah, go for it.
So basically, when you go to administer your bolus, you can see that there's a diluent section there. So you need to select the diluent of sodium chloride, 0.9%. That's the one. And then the number of mils that your pump tells you. So you've entered your weight into the pump, you've entered 18 units per kilo per hour, and it will tell you how many mils that bolus is equivalent to. You put that number of mils into here. So I don't know what
6.
that's equivalent to. It'll be 12.
Oh, go girl.
Alright, so then you sign that off. And that's your
You do your witnesses as usual.
If you refresh, that will then disappear because it's a once only bolus. And you can see down the bottom that we've administered 6,000 units. It won't tell you how many mils that's equivalent to. If you scroll down to the infusion, where's the infusion? Do you want me to show the weight?
Oh, that's right, I can do that. Oh, yes. Prompt me, remind me. But the other thing, I think, and Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, another change that you guys are getting is that we are removing... where did it go? Where's my bolus gone?
So here it says use heparin 5,000 units in 5 ml concentration. That's because the PA bolus out of a syringe instead of through their pump, because their pumps aren't set up to bolus through the pump. That will be removed, and it will say administer your bolus as per your local protocol. So that will be fixed prior to the arrive. So you won't see that note. It can be quite confusing from a nursing perspective.
Cool. Excellent. All right. So now we go up to our heparin infusion. So same as your usual continuous infusions, your IV fluids, we need to start the bag. So your pending task is there. You've got your rate there as well, in your 18 units per kilo per hour, plus you have another rate down the bottom if you really want to be working out your rate like you used to. you'll go ahead and hit your pending. Now, a couple of things it's going to ask you for. First of all, you need to put in your site as usual. And then it also pre-fills based off the order. So it knows that 18 units per kilo per hour was ordered, so it pre-fills that there as well. As well, you've got your little rate mils per hour as well, what you're probably used to as well. Now, I am going to begin that you do all your usual witnesses. That doesn't change. Wherever you witness on paper out there, you would do the same thing in the system. So you would normally put that in. I'll just apply that. What Catherine was talking about before with the waste, if you want to, what you can do, and I'm assuming this is the recommended one for Logan, you can actually go to the waste and you would put in the 12 mils that you bolused through for the heparin bolus. The reason you would do that, it just makes that final volume of that syringe nice and accurate. Okay, most of the time you'd probably find that you'd replace that syringe before you get to the end of it anyway, but just so it's absolutely accurate and there's no chance someone can put in the extra couple of mils, you can put in your waste volume there because you've bolused it from the syringe. Whereas at the PA we do it with a separate one, so we don't do a waste because it hasn't come out of the same syringe. Does that make sense? Yeah? Very similar to your bolus workflow for fluids. Okie doke. We sign that off. So that's now going. Now nothing there other than your heparin bolus has gone to your fluid balance chart, the mils I'm talking about, because remember your fluid balance chart reads infuse amounts and bolus amounts, not rates. So this is all based off rates. If you're really strict on your fluid balance charts and you do put in your heparin infusions, you would need to put that in as an infuse amount. Okay, because this is purely just the rates of the... Now, before I forget, another little fancy thing, and I don't know how much they show you in training, is your medication infusions section in iView. Has everyone seen this before? So this is for your titratable infusions. So not all infusions will pull here, just your titratable ones. I think I've showed this before. In iView maybe, I can't remember. They're all starting to merge into the same. So your heparin infusion will show here, and it reads back and forth from the MAR. So if you change the rate on the MAR, it's going to talk through here. If you change it from here, it's going to talk back to the MAR. It really just comes down to your preference of where you like to change it. The reason people like the iView is because you can actually use your anti-coag monitoring as well, and it can show you your trends with your APTTs and things like that. Probably more beneficial for your insulin, IV insulin infusions, which I'm going to show you in a second if I move along quickly. If you want to do your rates from here, it is a right click, which you'd probably be doing from your units, and you go chart details. It's going to bring up that same window that you used to from the MAR. Okay. So up to you which way you want to use that one. But like I said, iView is usually when you want to view something else, one of the other assessments in iView that go together with that medication infusion. So your insulin infusion is always a good one because then you can see your rate of your insulin infusion plus your BGLs in the same line. Or if you're doing your GTN infusions, you can see your blood pressures and things like that together with those rates. Okay, now let's say that I'm going to change back over to a doctor. How am I going so far? Everyone with me? Good. Are there any nurses in the room that do that titrate the pumps themselves? Anyone from your cardiology wards do? Oh, bloody breeze! I love it. Great. Forget I said it. All right. So let's go back in and let's say that APTT has been done. It's 6 hours later. And we now have that APTT back. And let's say that range is now in between 55 and 70. Okay, so now the doctors go, what do I need to do? So if they select on that phase, the 55 to 70 phase, it's going to tell them what they need to do. So up the top, it says modify the existing heparin infusion order by increasing your rate 2 units per kilo per hour. And then as well as that, it says to give a heparin bolus 40 units per kilo. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, I prefer to do the units first because then you're not going to forget it. So if it says to increase the rate by 2 units, so you need to go back to that original order. Remember your original order always sits in the infusion order phase. So we go back to this one and we scroll down to our order. We're going to modify it like we would do most orders. And we're going to say, okay, well that's now changed to 20. Okay. And then the other thing it asked us to do was to do a bolus as well. So we can do our bolus as well. So we'll come in here, we'll select that one. It is going to bring up the calculator again and say, okay, well, based off that weight, this time it's 3,000 units. So we go, okay. That's just giving you, again, like we said before, that should really be defaulted to now. I'll double check and make sure that's right. And then your APTT again. So this is all based off those guidelines on your piece of paper. So the same as you'd read that and say, okay, it says to do an APTT again in 6 hours, the same instructions are written in these phases. So you would order that as well. We're going to go ahead and initiate, and I'll show you what that looks like on the other end. Now, most importantly, the doctor then goes to you and tells you that you have to change the rate, just like they would now. As well as that, though, another little nice benefit is we have the alert going to our Care Compass, and if it's playing my game today, I am going to show you that. So I'm logged in as a nurse now. Dun, dun, dun. That's really annoying. Is this even my right patient? I'm now starting to second guess. Okay, cool, that's not my right patient. That would be why. Always check that it's your right patient. That's embarrassing. So there's all the other orders that I didn't see before as well. So it's telling me that that's been modified, and so now it's 20 units per kilo. So that's kind of the safety catch if the doctor hasn't let you know, but ideally the doctor's come and told you to change that rate. Okay? And likewise, if it's begun or if there's boluses, it's all going here as well. Wow, that was embarrassing. Okay, let's mark that as a review. The other thing, have you guys seen that if you right-click on your patient's name and you can actually just jump straight to the MAR? That's another nice little shortcut. I don't know how much people use that one. I mean, it just saves you clicking on the name and then going, I mean, it saves you one click. But if you're like me, you love a shortcut. So, now, our heparin, there's our bolus. So the bolus would be done the same way that Catherine showed you before through your pump, doing it exactly the same way. The infusion down here, so it's now telling you that now it's 20 units per kilo per hour. Okay, so when you go into your pending task and you go to your rate change, because we're going to change the rate, you now have a little link saying, well, here's the new rate for you. Now it's 3 mils or 20 units per kilo. So when you select that one, yeah, that'll change. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah,
No.
yeah, that's
What was I going to say? So when you select that hyperlink, it changes the rate for you. Okay? I do want to show you how it looks a little bit different in interactive view as well. Okay? I don't actually want to do that just yet. Just before we do that, so you can see. And we go to our medication infusions, and we're going to go, okay. Okay. Doesn't normally do that. You normally get a little box. Sorry, Mock's being real fun today. You get a little box saying the order has since been changed. This is the new rate. Or, so you don't normally get this nice pretty box. It's very similar though. It says the same thing. Your rate's now been changed to 3 mils per hour or 20 units per kilo per hour. Man.
Can I just note also,
Yeah.
the banner bar at the top, that actually reflects what's currently running in the pump. It doesn't reflect what's currently ordered. So when you accept the new rate, that will update the banner bar at the top. So that's a really important point.
Absolutely.
People are coming to you saying, this doesn't match, that's working as designed. So basically that banner bar reflects what you've currently implemented as running until you update it and change it. So if you are administering from the MAR, you'll be able to see what's ordered on the MAR and what's currently running in the same screen.
Lovely. All right, let's apply that. We refresh. Your anticoag now's got a little bit more information on it. If I had any APTTs, I'd be sitting there as well with your related results. So, now let's do if the APTT came back and it was high. Is everyone happy with that one so far? Makes sense? Your rate changes, so it's in your face saying this is the new rate. Okay, go ahead and change it. So, let's go back into our orders. I've got to change over to a doctor. So now it's going to come back high, and so I want to show you the withhold. So how it's going to tell you to withhold that infusion. So let's go back to our orders. So let's say now that APTT greater than 200. Okay, so obviously our instructions have now changed. It's saying to withhold the infusion. Actually, no, let's do, I want to show you one of these ones. Let's do, so modify the existing heparin infusion by reducing the rate to 3 units per kilo per hour, but it's also telling you to withhold for 60 minutes as well. So once that 60 minutes is done, it wants it to resume at that 3 units per kilo per hour. So what the doctors need to do is they'll come in and they'll go to their original order. So first of all, they should change that rate. Okay, so they don't forget. All right, so first of all, they're going to come in here. They're going to go down to there. They're going to go modify just like they did before. They're going to change it. If the doctors ever forget, if they're like, oh, what did it say? Did it say 3 or did it say 2? They can always just go back into that phase and it's going to tell them what it says. All right, so they've done that part of it. And now it also said to withhold. So there is what we call a dummy order. You're probably going to hear that a little bit. And that means that it's just an order, and it's more of a communication order than anything. It's to let everyone know who's looking at that chart that that infusion is on a withhold at the moment. Because as you've probably seen in previous forums, there is no actual withhold functionality in the system. There's nothing that clearly says withhold, which irks me. And hopefully we'll get something else for it. You know, you're used to your chart not dones and you're not givens. That's our withhold in the system. So we do have what we call a dummy order. Again, your APTT is there. I'm going to go ahead and initiate that so I can show you what that looks like. So the reason I haven't, as a doctor, gone in and changed that rate to 0 is because what we know is that if the doctor, this went back and forth a lot, by the way, when we were designing and building. If we had the doctors change that rate to 0, the chances are they probably aren't going to come back after the hour and change it back. So this is where the dummy orders come into it. This is why they've changed the rate already for when we're ready to come back. But they've also put this withhold. The withhold order's gone to your care compass like the other ones and said you need to withhold this order. So that, again, that's your communication plus the doctor coming and telling you. When we go to the MAR, there's a couple of things that need to happen. So I'll show you what the withhold order looks like. It sits with your heparin infusion. So underneath there, you've got your withhold 60 minutes. There are other durations of the withhold in there as well. There's 120. There's all your usual based off your protocol. So it sits there saying that you need to withhold this infusion. And then it says, then restart at the reduced rate. Okay? There is no task there, you'll notice. There's nothing there that you need to do as a nurse. It's just sitting there, or as a clinician looking at this, it's just sitting there telling everyone that this infusion needs to be withheld. Now, the important part for the nurses or whoever's modifying that pump is that they now need to come in and say when they did pause that or when they have stopped that infusion, so everyone knows 60 minutes from now, this is when we need to restart it at that reduced rate. So how we do that is we come back into our pending, we go to our rate change, and although it's saying, well, this is the new rate when your 60 minutes is up, but we know that we still have the withhold to do, so we change this. We change it to 0 and say, well, it's stopped. There's nothing going in it. For 60 minutes, we need to withhold this. It's time-stamped exactly, so at 2:15, everyone knows. So at 15:15, that's when it needs to be restarted at the 17 units. So we apply that one. You are going to get an alert saying, well, that doesn't match the order. This is one of those circumstances you're allowed to go, yeah, I know, because I need to withhold it. We sign that off. And now you can see that unit is 0 units per kilo per hour. This is the same with any infusion, by the way. So if any of those continuous infusions that you need to pause for whatever reason, you change the rate to 0. That's how you let any other clinician know that's reading that chart that that's a 0. So for theatres and things like that, that's quite a common workflow. When the patients come in on a lot of these infusions, they'll a lot of the times pause them. They'll be changing those rates to 0. Okay? After the 60 minutes is done, there is a cleanup job, there is an ops job in the system, and that order automatically disappears to 60 minutes. So there's nothing that you have to do, unlike your insulin, like your subcutaneous dose checks and things like that. Sorry, your insulin, your IV insulin infusion. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about because we haven't even got there yet. Don't even worry about it. I'm rambling. All right. So that's the withhold. So after the 60 minutes is done, let's just say that's already done. This automatically goes away. It's finished. You'll come back in and you change the rate back to what it was. Okay, so we go back to the rate. Thankfully, it's still there, so you don't have to go back into the order and try and work out what it was. We can still see it's still there waiting for us. We go back and say, yes, 17 units is what they asked for, and we apply it, and now it's going again. Does that make sense? If they didn't decrease the rate, then it's just going to be the withhold, okay, and you just put it on pause. That's why I wanted to show you that one where they have to reduce it as well. So it's the reduce when you come back after the 60 minutes. Does that make sense? A little bit clearer than training, go in, practice. Heparin is not as scary as it first looks with all that, but it's just all those words. It's too much. But it's just it's all that information that needs to be there. So, wow, I have 10 minutes to smash out insulin. Said no one ever. All right, so let's just start with insulin. I knew that complex meds were going to take longer. That's why they're complex. So next week we do have parenteral and enteral nutrition. We'll do that because that actually doesn't take that long. So I've purposely left only those two topics. And anything we don't do this week, we'll tack on to next week. I also want to do PCAs and NICIs as well. I kind of thought I'd get through blood, but I'm not going to. So blood we'll try and smash that out as well. I'm going to start with some of the basic insulin though while I'm here. Does anyone know has anyone heard the terminology care set? Oh, good on you guys. That's good. So it looks a little bit different. Your power plans obviously have your little yellow. I know a lot of people refer to it as the cheesy pizza. And then the care set's the lactose intolerant one, so there's no cheese on it. Don't laugh. The guy that made that up thought it was the best joke ever. And everyone always laughs at it. All right. So this is our care set. Now they're all of our insulin orders. Actually, let's just try and make this a little bit bigger so you can see them. So this is a little bit different to anything else you will do in the system when it comes to ordering regular insulin. Okay, they're the only ones that we use the care sets for, and the reason we need to do it is because of the variable dosing. So it's not as easy as just doing one order of insulin. We know that we'll order insulin for regular dosing, but it might be 2 units in the morning, then it's 4 units, and they get nothing, and then it's... So we needed something in the system to try and replicate that. Again, this is one of the tricky ones that we had to try and get over the line last year, but we think we've done a good job with it. So I'm going to show you if we wanted to order on our patients some NovoRapid and Levemir. So you can do two. So we know that we have their short-acting plus their long-acting. Rather than having to do two separate care sets, we have built some of them that commonly go together in the same care set. So I go ahead and select this one, and this is what your care set looks like. Quite similar to a power plan, less yellow. So up the top you have your patient care tasks, so they're all your blood glucose monitoring. If you are a doctor, I would be double checking they don't already have some of these, because as soon as a patient comes in, they're a diabetic, any good nurse is going to put them straight on blood glucose monitoring. So they probably already have some patient care tasks that they're reminding themselves to do. So sometimes rather than putting more orders on, so if you're a nurse on the other end and now you've got some more orders coming through and your Care Compass has like 3 blood glucose monitoring, it might just be that you've got a doctor who's put a few extra patient care tasks. It's easy to just go in and cancel them like you would any other way. Your insulin subcutaneous dose check. I'll talk about that in a minute. There is a reason for that. And again, that's one of those dummy orders, like your withhold one, where it just kind of sits there letting everyone know. There is a reason we have those. And then down here are the actual orders. So you'll notice they're separated into Monday, Tuesday, and they've got those 7 days of the week. So if I wanted to order my insulin for NovoRapid on the Monday, and I select this one here, this is our variable dosing here that it allows you to do. That's a good point. Today is not Monday, so we can actually see it. I actually might do Wednesday because we've missed most of them for today. So you have your times of morning, afternoon, evening, and bedtime, which they've actually changed in the system. I think it's 7 o'clock, 12 o'clock. We fixed them up. The timing didn't quite match the insulin, but they've all since been corrected. And this is where the doctors are able to put in that variable dosing. Okay, so they can come through and go, okay, well, in the morning we'll give them 6 units, then at lunchtime let's give them 4, let's give them 2, and maybe at bedtime I don't want to give them anything. Okay, because we're going to give the Levemir. Actually, that makes sense. So you'll see that it's selected Wednesday. Now, doctors may be tempted to come through and select these ones as well, to say, well, I want that same regime on every day. They don't do it this way. There is the endocrinologists like their insulin to be given really realistically should be ordered every 24 hours rather than just doing a whole week's worth of insulin. I know that it doesn't happen always like that out there. I think we all know that. But so it's in line with statewide guidelines and things like that. This is why it's been built that way for every 24 hours. Now, with that said, so if I wanted to order Thursdays, I need to come back here and choose Thursday here, not Thursday from the little box that I did before. So again, I do need to still go in and do, you know, whatever the regime was. No, that was wrong. So I would do that for each of the days that I need, okay? And then when they're done, when that order's done, it automatically discontinues on your MAR, okay? Because it knows it's 24 hours. The reason you have your dose checks is because if that's 0, if when I get to the end of that 24-hour order, this is what, hopefully it doesn't get confusing, once that order's done, and let's say for some reason I haven't ordered tomorrow's dose, which actually happens all the time, some of the doctors will just order that day and they haven't yet got to the Thursday one, then nothing is going to show on my MAR, is it? Because there's no active order. So if I've already given all these and we're now at 6 o'clock in the evening and I don't have a bedtime dose, so there's no more orders left on the MAR. So there's no order now on the MAR, which means we run the risk of the next day, how do you know that patient's on insulin unless you're going through your discontinued? There's a little bit of a risk there, which is where these these subcutaneous dose checks come in to remind you, have you got a dose, this patient's on insulin, have you got a dose for the next day? Or have you got a dose for the next occurrence? Does that make sense? It is one of those system things that we've had some limitations with, and we've gone back and forth. So this one particular, I think heparin's easier than insulin. It does take a little bit more to get used to the insulin side of things. Okay, so that's really why that dose check is there, to say, hey everyone, this patient's on insulin, just so you know. If you don't have any orders for tomorrow, you need to get some. Okay, and I'll show you what it looks like. It might help if I show you. All right. Did I order my dose check? The other thing with your dose check, I will just jump in. 4 times a day, pre-meal. If your patient is only on a BD regime or 6-hour or whatever, you would obviously change those times. Okay, so your dose check, so it's saying, do you have a dose? If it's only twice, if the patient only takes, you know, insulin twice, morning and evening, there's no need to have dose checks 4 times, because then it's just annoying the nurses, and then the nurses are probably going to the doctors, have you got insulin for lunchtime? They're like, they're not even on insulin at lunchtime. So it does help if you change the subcutaneous dose checks to match whatever the insulin regime is. So if I would change that to only, you know, BD if that was the case. You'll see, hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense when I get to this next page. Absolutely.
The subcutaneous dose check is pre-ticked. So
Yes.
insulin has already been
Yes, Catherine.
passed, you need to untick it because otherwise you will get duplicate
And
subcutaneous.
unhappy nurses. That is a very good point. I'm glad you raised that as a non-nurse. If that is quite common, and I guarantee you will see that when you go live, your patient will have 9 subcutaneous dose checks or something ridiculous, because it is default tick. But when you weigh up the risk of not having it ticked, obviously that won out, because you don't want no one knowing this patient's on insulin. So they are default ticks. So if you do have a lot of subcutaneous dose checks on your MAR, you can get rid of them. We probably do need a decision made. I don't know if we've done that yet, Catherine, for here, whether nurses can get rid of these subcutaneous dose checks. Oh yeah, pharmacists are going to be your best friends cleaning up that MAR. Sorry guys at the back. The nurses will love you for it though, but we might just double check if there is a business rule. I know at the PA we started off with no, it should be the doctors getting rid of it. They've made the mistake, so they need to go on. It's you know, everyone's learning, and when you've got a MAR that's messy, doctors don't have time to sometimes come back and try and correct a lot of that. So in the end at the PA it did change during that go live period. Just if there were a couple of subcutaneous dose checks, they only need 1, you can go through and get rid of the rest. So we might just follow up on that, and we'll let you know what the outcome of that is. But certainly pharmacists and doctors can get rid of all those extra ones. I'm so glad you raised that, Catherine. I would have killed myself if I forgot about that. All right, let's show you what this all looks like. Here's our insulin. Yes, I can. That is a great idea. So hopefully last week Catherine went through some of the filters on the MAR, the different ways you can see therapeutic class view. She did. Beautiful. That's one of the easiest ways, because when you've got a MAR and the patient's on insulin, because they are all 24-hour orders, and you've got a doctor that's ordered a few days in advance, you can get a lot of insulin orders, the insulin lines, so it can get quite confusing in amongst all their regular medications and things. So this is where your therapeutic class becomes very handy. Same with when you're doing your continuous and your heparins. It would have been better for me if I got rid of everything else and just looked at the continuous, perhaps. Okie dokie. So this is what it looks like. Your 6 units, so this was for tomorrow, wasn't it? So you can see your W, your Wednesday. So it's only showing me up to 24 hours in advance, so I can see I've got my insulin ordered. The one I do really want to show you, which actually I don't think will show if I've got it on this one, is the subcutaneous dose check. There it is there, so subcutaneous dose check adult. And it looks a little bit differently. What's today? 24th, and it's 2. So where is it? Oh, because it's for there we go. So the next one it's given me, because I didn't change it, so the 5 o'clock it's saying, do you have a dose for 5 o'clock today? So all it says is 1 each. It doesn't give you a dose, so there's no way a nurse can look at that and go, oh, well, I need to go and give some insulin. It just says 1 each. And then you've got it there nice clearly saying it's a dose check. So ideally you'd see your dose check, and then your next point of call is to go see whether you've got an insulin dose ordered. If there's no line, if there's no insulin on that MAR at all, no active orders, then you know you need to call a doctor and get an order. Okay, so those dose checks should line up for when the insulin is due to say, hey, heads up. And just like everything on the MAR, it becomes active the hour before and hour after, so it gives you that 2-hour period. So they'll be available an hour before the insulin's even due to say, hey, do you want to go check if you need to go get some insulin? Does that make sense? Good. I would recommend that once you've called the doctor, say, hey, listen, I need some insulin for this patient, you haven't ordered any, I would recommend you leave it there until they actually order it. Just in case if you go off shift and another nurse comes on, just so then it's not gone and then for some reason that falls through the gaps, which obviously can happen. I would leave it there until the order's there. As soon as you see the order, the insulin order's there, then you need to come in and say, okay, well, that's done. And you can sign that off to say, yes, I've made that check, we're all happy. God, that time went quick. Does that make sense? That insulin, yeah? There are a couple of other workflows. Actually, there's a few. Insulin's a beast. You'd be surprised how many things fit on that one piece of paper. Actually, really quickly, I'll show you the phone order. I'll go through the IV infusion because it's very similar to your heparin though, to be honest, but I will show you that. Supplemental's the other one I really want to show you as well because the supplementing dosing looks a little bit different, and the phone order. So when you don't have anything and we know the nurses, we normally call up and go, hey, I need an order. There's an order for that in the system as well separately, so you don't have to deal with all those other orders. So I'm sorry, I did try and go as quick as I could. I knew complex was going to be difficult. Has everyone got to rush off? Most people have to rush off, right? Yeah, that's fine. I've already had you for now. That's next week. We're back to weekly? Oh boy, you're going to be seeing a lot of us. So next week we'll keep going with complex. Thanks, guys. Oh, of course.